different.
What a great intro.
Are we still going?
Yeah, you're live.
Oh. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Covendom. This is episode 12, season 4, our season finale. I'm your host, Cain, and these are my lovely co-hosts, Levi, Rowland, and Elie Barnes. Tonight we're going to just be taking calls from some witches, discussing our pasts, our hopes, our fears, our dreams. We just decided to sort of have a no rules kind of thing. Before we get into it, though, I want to make a couple announcements. So once again, Hex Fest is coming up this August. It is the 12th through the 14th. It is a magical weekend where we start the whole weekend out on a riverboat ritual where we will be doing a rite to Isis. This year will be very Roman styled. We're thinking naming and Caligula and all the good stuff.
Caligula.
So we're going to have a great time. We go down the Mississippi, and then we have all these wonderful workshops and classes and panels in store for the weekend, and you get to meet magical people from practices all over the world. And, you know, it's just a great time. So we're very excited for that. There's still tickets available for the whole thing. For locals or people who cannot make the riverboat ritual because we fill up, there are day passes also available. So aside from that, I think we're just going to focus tonight on, I don't know, peering into each other's pasts. And we really welcome callers.
Disagree.
We're definitely going to be...
Firm no.
We'll just play Truth, Dare, Forfeit right here.
We will not.
The number to call in is 309-GODDESS. So it's on the screen there. Or you can text chat your questions, except for Levi's the only one who can read those, and he monitors them.
And I do. I filter.
And filters them and doesn't tell me things.
I do, 100%.
So sometimes he doesn't want me to answer some questions.
This is correct. I will sometimes be like, just scroll past that one. No, thank you.
Anyway, Ellie's going to do our icebreaker now.
We're going to break some
ice. I am ready, and I want to say that doing Covendom this year has been incredibly interesting for me because every week we discuss our topic and try to come at it from different angles still in British traditional witchcraft. So I read and I look things up and I go back and look at my books and I look things online and I just love the research. And that's why I write the notes about what I'm finding out. So today, this is what I thought about today. If these are stories about our personal journeys in witchcraft, in magic, before our initiations, and our hopes for the future, and our questions about the world of magic, how do people come to that? How do we arrive there? I thought about it in terms
desperation,
of
drugs.
Desperation, drugs. I thought about it in terms of the age that we enter, that we're noticing witchcraft and the occult around us. So I was born in the middle 60s, so I have some really early memories from the late 60s and early 70s. Like I remember watching Sybil leak on the Johnny Carson show. You know, this is just that's how old I am. We stayed up late as cousins in the summer on my grandparents' back porch and watched all the weird what is it? Dark Shadows.
Yeah, Dark Shadows, the soap opera.
Who, and, you know, those weird UFO shows. And so that's my generation. If you look at witches today, and we certainly talk to a lot of them in the shop, you can really sort of notice, did they become aware of witchcraft or astrology or magic or herbalism in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s. And there's just a real strong flavor, I think, to what was going on in the world in these 10-year periods. And I think that when we enter the realm of the occult, that decade, that flavors us, it marks us. So I wanted to think about modern witchcraft in America. This is where we all three were born. And this is where
Allegedly.
Can you prove that?
This is where we were first exposed to the occult. And so part of our things that we'll probably mention and talk about are what those first things were. But I'm doing icebreakers, and I have a series of questions from American witchcraft history from the 1950s to the 1990s.
1 second,
Okay.
Ellie. We got to make this face you, dear.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
Brian.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Knocked into it.
Now look, here's the trick. You have to be able to do this.
What do we have to be able to do?
Drink and talk at the same
So we've got
time.
questions about
Okay.
the history.
Let's think about early witchcraft in Salem. Which, by the way, wasn't really witchcraft, right? Everyone that says, "Oh, I'm related to the Salem witches," they weren't. They weren't witches.
There's no proof of anything really. There may be a small amount of proof for some folk magic, and then Tituba did some divination stuff, but there's not like proof of like witchcraft.
Worshipping witchcraft, right?
Not
Religious
not
witchcraft.
even really spells, really. Like there was something about a poppet, which could have just been a childhood doll, and then there was Tituba's divination stuff, which was kind of games people played back then, so who knows?
African. Okay.
Yeah. She wasn't African. She was Native American.
What year
Most people think.
was the last witch tried in the United States and found guilty? And who is it? What year and what's her name? It was in Salem.
I just read, actually, when you say tried, you mean tried for like old school witchcraft?
Yeah.
Because there have been people tried for witchcraft in modern times.
Yep. 1878.
I don't remember.
Yep.
Sarah Good.
Lucretia Brown.
Lucretia Brown.
Yep,
It's a good drag
1878.
name, everybody, if you're out there and you're waiting for one. And you got like a witch theme.
Okay.
Like, welcome to the stage, Lucretia Brown.
So in the 1700s, we've got people coming from England, Scotland, Ireland, and then eventually other countries in Europe. And then who else met us here? African influence, American Indian influence, island and
Technically,
central.
we met the Native Americans here.
We
I was
met
about to
them.
say.
They were
We
here
met them.
first.
They
They were
met us
here
here.
first.
They came on over. We all got, started partying together. We all started
I
mixing
don't know
together.
if it was a party.
In rural.
This is the weirdest icebreaker. There are no questions.
Okay. Yes, there are. Okay. In the Appalachian Mountains of the United States, what's the type of magic?
Well, it was mostly Germanic, but there was an Irish influence as well.
Yeah, granny magic, they call it, which is not really a term used in Appalachia, but it's used by people outside of it.
What else would they maybe say? I was thinking granny magic because that's the one that comes
Yeah,
to mind.
you don't really
most.
hear that. It's not a term that natives use, but a lot of people who are into Appalachian magic but weren't born there, to be perfectly honest, they use that
most
term
of
a lot,
them.
which is most of them, yeah.
What about the German traditions?
When I researched
What about
it,
them?
which he knows
What are
more
they
than
called?
I've been, powwow?
Powwow?
Powwow and
Isn't
Braucherei.
powwow more Pennsylvania, though?
Yeah.
Pennsylvania Dutch, though Dutch is German. Deutsch.
Yeah, they're not Dutch, they are German. It's a mispronunciation on American parts.
I know
Powwow
that they...
and Hexen.
Hexerei, yeah.
I mean, Appalachia is really a big place, right?
Appalachia.
Appalachia.
What year did Arthur
I don't
Miller's
speak mountain.
What year did Arthur Miller's play The Crucible first acted out?
I don't like this game.
Okay, the Crucible would have been, it's during the Red Scare.
Yes, the Red Scare.
Yes, the Red Scare, because that's what it's about. 1950.
What is the Red Scare? The Scarlet Fever?
52?
52.
53? I was like, I know.
Oh, you mean the communist Red
Yes,
Scare?
yes.
Yeah. Because
But
it's a.
that and the witch hunts, Joseph McCarthy, and
Yep.
the communist
Oh,
hunts,
okay.
that and
Have
the
you
Cold,
no decency, sir?
the
and
Cold
long
War,
last.
that sort of flavored that paranoia about
You know,
those doing wrong.
And it flavored like an anti-German sentiment in witchcraft. We talked
And
about
I-
it last show.
And I don't remember that because, I'm not born in the 50s, but that was right before me.
She
okay?
was only there spiritually.
All right. In the late 1800s,
We're jumping around.
we had people called Dr. Buzzard, Dr. Snake, and Hex Doctor.
Okay.
And they were occasionally tried for practicing fake medicine or killing people accidentally.
Cool.
And they were called what?
Conjure Man?
One of the names, yep.
Snake oil people?
Snake Doctor?
That's good too. Witch doctor.
Witch Doctor,
Yes.
yeah. The Witch Doctor.
So that was going on, and there was also shootings, murders in and around witch doctors. That was tabloid press
Orleans?
back then,
Yeah,
right?
tabloid press, yeah, big
that
stories.
Dr. Snake shot Dr. Buzzard. And
I
then
think
there
that's
was,
still happening in New Orleans. Like the Bone Lady
Isn't
went
it?
after somebody with a gun on the French Quarter.
isn't it?
I think she shot him. It was her boyfriend, though, wasn't it?
In what year? So two things happened in this year. Gerald Gardner died, and it was the first year of Bewitched on TV.
Lori Cabot came to town.
No, what year did that happen?
71?
68?
68? 69.
64. The
64.
year.
Oh,
I was
really?
only 4
Yes.
years off.
Really?
Yes, the
Proud of
year,
myself.
The year of my birth, and I always tell this story. Gardner died
Well, then Lori
in
Cabot hadn't come yet, I don't think.
Gardner died in enough time that I could have been conceived and reincarnated as Gerald Gardner, because I was born in the end of
I think it's a
1964.
possibility.
It may
he
be.
died in the beginning of
It
1964.
may be.
All right, what most of us saw in the 1960s, Sybil Leek on Johnny Carson, all the UFO
We weren't
shows,
there.
the paranormal.
I was not even
I know.
a thought yet.
I'm very young. I learned about witchcraft on TikTok.
Okay. What was the fallout what were the groups of fallout in the United States that we would have seen maybe in the 70s besides like Theosophy in New York City?
The Covenant of the Goddess.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
There was that weird guy on the East Coast who had the Temple of Aphrodite.
I don't know.
Marco Adler talks about him in Drawing Down the Moon, but he was there. Are you talking about who was around in the 70s?
Yeah. Yeah, and sort of that it was
Herman Slater.
Faria, right?
Fairy,
Raymond Buckland,
the fairy
obviously.
tradition.
Yeah, the Faria and the fairy, both of them.
Fellowship of Isis in Ireland, Olivia, and
Oh, we're going all over the world.
well, but that was still practiced here. People joined the Fellowship of
they
Isis
did.
in the United
70s,
States.
the Alexandrian Renaissance was still well underway.
Beverly Randolph and others in late 1800s were doing Rosicrucianism in America. Amorc
I
started
don't know
in
what
New
time
Jersey.
we're in. We're
All of it.
Spencer
All of it.
Lewis is Amorc,
Right.
I think.
Hermetic
like-
Brotherhood of Lexor was in the United States,
Yep.
1888.
Yeah,
Paul
that one.
Foster Case was from Boston and started Boda in Boston. I didn't
Yep,
realize
Builders
that.
of the Adytum.
I thought he was. So those things were floating around. Like you could see it in the magazine if you looked at Fate or Fortune.
Sure.
It was well under its way.
Okay. That's my books. What does WITCH stand for? It's a political group. W-I-T-C-H.
Oh, I remember.
Do we have to do this?
What were they? Women in...
Women's International Terrorist
Yes.
Conspiracy from Hell.
Conspiracy from Hell. I remember this.
I've heard it, yeah.
You'll know this. What most famous woman witch started the Dianic witchcraft movement?
Budapest. Susanna Budapest.
1971.
Yep, it's early.
California.
Yep. 1970.
Fairy tradition. Victor and Cora Anderson, 1960s.
Pacific Northwest.
1734 tradition. Who brought that? Who brought that here to the
I
U.S.?
can't think of the guy's name. I just know he's connected to.
George?
Yeah.
Joseph something like Bear Walker. Or
If
something.
you remember in the
There's more
comments.
than one because there's more than one person in America that had the letters, but I don't know what time frame it was.
But that was the 70s, and that was beginning to circulate a little bit. 1973, American Council of Witches. It's funny, they created 13 rules of witchcraft behavior, and then they all fought so bad they disbanded. And
It did not end well.
But their tenets were used by the Army in 1978 in the handbook of the chaplains.
For people who
the
identify
first
as...
legal document that we had in
Witches
the
or whatever.
United States was the first one that recognized witchcraft as a religion, and it sort of subheaded witchcraft and paganism and all that stuff together, but it did use the verbiage witchcraft was the chaplain's handbook.
Right.
And most of the early churches that started in witchcraft used that book to be the way to get through to the IRS, which is why they got rid of it. There's no longer a chaplain book in the military that mentions witchcraft anymore.
I'm self-employed, and on my business use of home form and my self-employed business form for my 1040, I have to write my occupation, and I put artist, witch, occultist, writer.
Beautiful.
And they always just send it back.
And they're just like, fine, girl. We're
with a
not...
big bill. Like,
What are they gonna say?
How about you owe another $6,000, Miss Occultist? How about that? Yeah, that's what I got last year. Okay, I don't know this. First,
You have to know it. You wrote it down.
no, I know. But first, no, I don't know the answer. I wrote the question.
Oh.
Because I didn't transition, I wasn't online when these first things started. I didn't go online till later. First witchcraft or paganism websites. I know WitchVox started in 97, though. There must have been stuff before that.
I know the hub of it. I don't know AOL. I think Amber and Jet was one of the earlier ones.
They used groups in the early days and like forums. It wasn't so much a particular site.
Right.
It was the rings that people would have of personally created
And
websites.
I wasn't
and forums.
around for AOL, so I don't know what it was
Okay,
like.
honey.
I really wasn't ever on
I didn't
AOL.
use AOL.
Yeah.
It's kind of before me too, but I entered the techno age
He's so
late
young.
in life.
Christian was on AOL.
Late in life, but
I was on AOL.
I just believe in
far.
crystals. I don't know how I got here.
I'm so young.
I got out all my oldest
I thought this was
witchcraft
going to be a 30-second
books.
video.
It is.
That's what we
This
do
is-
on TikTok. This long, drawn-out stuff.
My first little witchcraft books. I found them on my shelf today. Positive Magic,
We've got calls. coming
Marion
through.
Weinstein,
Oh, we do.
1978.
Very long.
A Witch's Guide, A Witch's Guide to Life. Here's another one we didn't talk about. Gavin and Yvonne Frost, 1978,
Do
School
you know
of Wicca.
my very first witchcraft lineage, which is traditional craft? That's what I like to say now because it's funny. They used to dislike the Frost so much that they would call anyone who liked the frostbitten.
Ooh,
But yeah, the frosts were problematic. They're deeply problematic.
I didn't really study them,
thank you.
but that book was at the library book sale, and I bought it.
The Frost had
a
pretty
huge
influential
follow.
correspondence.
Yes.
Like, where do you think I got my wand idea from? We tried it that once.
I can't. I'm not doing this.
Even this, Drawing Down the Moon by Margot Adler, 1979 was its first publication.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't read
it's
it
older than
till
people think.
like the late 80s. I didn't read it till then, and I thought, and also Triumph of the Moon, Ronald Hutton. I didn't read that until 4 or 5 years after it came
They're
out.
older than people realize.
And I'm like, what? So I think it's cool to sort of think about for yourself, for your own studies, where do I come into the world of the occult? How am I influenced by the media around me in terms of what I learn? What am I exposed to? And that's what we're here tonight to see our paths, right?
Agreed.
Okay, that's my icebreaker.
In all of its tattered glory.
I know, I loved it.
Well, she didn't get a lot of time, in all honesty.
We do have
Much
a
time.
call. I'm going to answer it. Before I don't need to do a speech because
If
we're
we've got
talking about
calls,
ourselves.
yeah.
We're talking
You
about
could,
ourselves.
and Elie did it.
You said we're supposed to talk about ourselves.
Hi,
Let's
is
just
this Claire?
Ask each other.
Hi, blessed be.
Blessed be. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Hit or miss?
I'm wonderful.
I mean, you want me to lie to these people?
All right. So, who should I start with? Who wants the first question?
Levi wants the first
I was
question.
going to say
Apparently.
Brian.
Levi, I think I prepared the worst question, actually.
Oh, okay. Give me the worst question.
All right. What do you believe in aliens? Do you believe aliens exist?
Okay.
And where would they fall in our praxis?
Wow.
My answers are pretty simple. Do I believe in them? Most likely. And where they fall in the practice? Nowhere. Because we don't interact with them in any
Except
real
for
way.
Elie.
I mean, it's just, I mean, do I think that the universe is void of life besides Earth? I think it's highly unlikely.
Highly
I think it's
unlikely.
highly unlikely. But I don't really I don't do any alien stuff. It was really big in certain eras.
Exactly what an alien would say.
Maybe I am an alien. I am representing, a culture from a distant planet. I'm doing my best. Here you go. It's the only aliens I care about.
There you go. There you go.
But no, I'm not a.
We could talk about the
I've never really been a.
Derek Taylor moment.
No, thank you. I've never been into UFOs or ufology or any of that, except for the fact that I do want to do like a tour of the American Southwest and eat at those dirty little cafes that are UFO themed and whatnot. That's kind of the extent of my aliens.
Maybe I should have posed it to Elie.
Go. I was about to say you asked the
Hey,
wrong person.
We
I'm
would
so
have got
boring.
a more exciting answer.
You would have.
Probably.
You would have.
I don't have anything more exciting to say about it. I believe, just like Levi, it's highly likely that there's other intelligent life in the multiverse. How do we interact with it as Alexandrian witches? We do not. And I'm scared TF from aliens, and I am not doing any magical crap with aliens. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Elie, who doesn't like a good probe?
I hang out under the bed with my flashlight. I am not doing it with the aliens. They scared the crap out of me. I met them when I was really little, and I was like, all right, y'all are off limit.
I love how it was.
I'll talk to Pan.
I
and-
agree with
and
Levi, but I
Anubis.
specifically said we don't really interact, and she's like, "Well, I met them."
I met them, and I said, I'd rather talk to Pan and Anubis than you, Creed. Sorry, I'm not going to say that about them because they listen to everything. I don't do magic with the aliens.
The tinfoils are here, children.
All right, Claire, what are your other questions?
Okay, let's go on to an easier one. Sorry about that, Levi. Brian, what was your first ever spell? Like, think back to your childhood, like the first time you ever interacted with magic. What was that spell, if you'll tell us?
Well, the very first spell I can actually think of was before I was officially practicing witchcraft. But we were like 10, 11 or something like that. And it was me and a few of my friends. And we had a D&D book and we were playing magic. And so we were at their fireplace and we were chanting a chant from Legend. I think it was the movie Legend. And we were chanting higher, higher, burning fire, singing like
Okay,
that.
full Tom Cruise moment.
So we were doing all that. So the next day we got in trouble because they got a chimney fire that day, and my friend's parents wouldn't let us play with them anymore because they thought we brought witchcraft into their house through D&D. But I can't say that it was my spell, but I was involved and there was a chimney fire, so who knows?
Okay.
That's pretty good, Brian. You can say you helped do that. You helped get that chimney ablaze. You did it.
Good for you.
It's the first thing I can remember. We were all a little creeped out.
Yeah, I love that.
That's a good one. That's a good
awesome.
story.
Those first results
Pyromania,
are scary.
huh?
It's very
Okay.
Carrie, right? Like, early Stephen King.
And then Elie, I had so many questions for you because I think you're like a little bit mysterious, and I love that about you. I want to ask, like, sort of, what was your life before you went in to become an Alexandrian? If you want to talk a little bit about the, like, in between.
I'm going to put it into 3 chunks. Education, early childhood and education. I have a degree in philosophy and a minor in comparative religion. And I was interested in mythology, history, languages, literature, and particularly interested in ancient civilization, Egypt, Greek, and Roman civilization. So I took a lot of classes like Greek philosophy, early Greek history, etc., that kind of, made a pattern of study. Then after college, I became a painter and was an artist, all the while studying the arts of magic, astrology, herbalism, palm reading, tarot, divination, spell casting, ritual creation. I did a lot of work with Servants of the Light, which is an occult order in England that's a Rosicrucian lineage from the Golden Dawn and Dion Fortune. That was correspondence work, but I did go to a lot of workshops. And when I moved to New Orleans about 9 years ago, I, like everyone else, was practicing ritual on my own, and I had altars and I practiced devotion to the gods that I still love today. And never imagined that I would really get the opportunity to practice with such a well-educated and grounded group. And it's been nothing but wonderful for me, nothing but wonderful. There's something about coming together with others that are trained and sincere that, as you know, is more powerful than anything we do by ourselves, I think.
Levi owes everything to us.
Yes, blessed be.
Blessed be, blessed be.
Blessed be. I owe everything.
Well, thank you so much, Claire. Blessed be. Thanks for calling in.
Blessed be.
Bye. Blessed be.
Bye.
We have another caller.
We'll get lots
Because
of calls.
we're so fancy today. Because you stacked the deck, and I'm kind of into it.
I always do in the season 5.
I know you do.
Oh.
Hi, you're on Covendom. Who's this?
Hi, blessed be, it's Angel.
Blessed
Blessed
be.
be.
How are
Angel,
you?
blessed be, Angel.
Hi, guys, I'm good. I'm panicking because I was about to ask Elie the same exact question. So,
Well, now you're on the
No.
spot, and you have to make up a new one.
You can
I
ask
am
me
right
about
now.
the aliens again.
No.
No, kidding.
I could, but aliens terrify me as well, Elie. I'm not going to talk about them.
Good.
But Brian, what made you want to, because you were already, this is in your book, you were already a 3rd degree when you decided to pursue a higher education in Alexandrian craft, right? What made you decide to deepen that?
I think, when I first started emerging into the bigger world of modern witchcraft, Levi keeps moving the screen. It's very distracting.
You should be looking at the camera anyway.
I know, but I always think I'm looking at this. I didn't think I should at first, because at first I thought it was devaluing the process that I'd been through. But I think what it was is I kept meeting Gardnerians and Alexandrians, and I realized that they had something that I didn't have, and I was drawn to it. I very much liked all of the initiates that I was meeting, and I realized that, somewhere along my journey there, that there was, I kind of realized I'd gone through grade school and I needed to go forward, So I was a 3rd degree in a different system, a system that was, basically mimicking the Gardnerian system, which many do. But I had gone through the rituals, and I don't devalue those initiations. They were initiations. And I think that's one of the reasons why I so love what Maxine coined about us being on the path of initiation. So the path of initiation started for me, when I was 16, 17, maybe even 15, because I started getting interested in it, but really manifested for me at 17, and it's still happening, I don't imagine I'll ever get initiated again, but I wouldn't put it past the universe either. I'm not going to put a thing on that. So really, I think it was about being drawn to the history. And I also, even though I'm not somebody who believes in fate, I do think there are certain things that are fated, because my mindset during that time was not to be what I am now in the way that I am now. It was just because I wanted to go into it. When I moved to New Orleans, I'd been running a coven for about 25 years in Washington, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought I might go practice voodoo or study something else. I was ready for an adventure. I certainly wasn't planning on signing up for, another 25 years.
Oh, wow. You did say that,
Yes.
that you weren't sure what you'd find.
No,
in
I
New
wasn't
Orleans,
sure.
but-
I thought, I had all kinds of exotic thoughts. So I think it was a psychic awareness that there was something deeper that I wanted to tap into. But my switch or my shift wasn't changing a belief system. So I came into it believing in many of the things that I still believe in. I would say the Alexandrian tradition further empowered that, finessed it, and really polished the brass.
Okay.
Did that answer the
Hey,
question?
thank you.
Yes, beautifully.
And it pulled you back. Witchcraft said to you when you got to New
Can't
Orleans,
get away,
you're still
sorry.
ours, right?
Yeah,
You're still ours. You're going to find it again, and it's going to be what you really want. I love that.
So it's like Hotel California. You can check in, but you can't check out.
Mm-hmm.
You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave.
Oh,
You know what that's
Sorry.
like, Angel.
yes.
And, I also really liked a lot of Alexandrians that I met during my journey early on.
Fair.
I do too. I like Alexandrians.
Me too.
They're a fun lot, is what I've heard. All right, guys. Well, blessed be.
You're not going to ask anyone else a
I wonder
question?
if I
Just
was
you.
thought
Only
were gonna,
you, Brian.
I thought you were going to ask Levi something exotic next, Angel.
Sure.
Oh, God. Okay.
Do it.
Go ahead.
Ask him how mean I was.
Something exotic.
Oh, he was mean.
Exotic.
He's still mean.
How did you deal with Brian all those years?
All right, I have a question for you, Levi.
Okay.
So you might not remember, but like 2 years ago, I called in and asked you what drew you to the craft, and you were talking about how you were actually on the path of priesthood, right? Like Catholicism.
Yep.
Am I correct?
Yes.
Do you sometimes find it difficult to go from such a strict, non-sexualized religion to a very hypersexualized religion? Is that something that you found difficult to transition from?
I would argue, in a funny way, I think Catholicism is bizarrely sexual. I think there's a debate, and I don't like debates between non-believers and believers. I think they're pointless because nobody in the room is going to change their mind. It's just it's a pointless thing. But they got really popular during the New Atheist movement, and there's a very famous one between Christopher Hitchens, who is a very popular atheist writer, and Stephen Fry, the actor and writer.
Love Stephen.
Yeah.
I've seen them
And then on the
together.
other side, it's Anne
Dialogue.
Widdecombe, who's a conservative member of Parliament in Britain and who converted to Catholicism when the Anglican Church ordained women, and a cardinal from Africa. I believe he's the cardinal archbishop in Lagos, I think. Anyway, long, rambly beginning. But there's a scene where Stephen Fry in the debate says, sex is a little bit like food. It can be fun, it can be delicious, it can be naughty, and a lot of people will say certain groups are obsessed with sex, but the only people obsessed with food are anorexics and the morbidly obese, which is really the Catholic Church in a nutshell sexually. That's what he says, right? They're all celibate or they're doing something absolutely terrible. And so it's like this weird energy. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of sensual imagery actually in Catholicism. I mean, Christ on the cross is incredibly sensual. Saint Andrew, full of arrows. The lactating Virgin Mary, the Virgin's lactans
This
and all
is
that.
the things
kinda
that are
like they
turning
say,
Levi on. He's
It's
talking
not.
about.
It's not.
Well, they say Mary's not a goddess, but we all know Mary's a goddess.
Mary's a goddess in all but name,
it's
yes.
the same kind of idea. The devil's a god in Christianity. They just don't call it that.
Correct. And so I would say it kind of carries over pretty well, to be honest.
Yes, I was going to say. I think so
Except
too.
I
So you
can
didn't-
vouch for. I believe he's being touched a lot more nowadays.
How dare you?
Touched. He said touched.
Touched by
I
many
think
things.
witches.
The
have-
Lord.
I think witches get more love than Catholics do.
I would agree with that.
I would like to add too, though. I think in witchcraft sexuality, it's natural, and so we're more balanced because of it. Not in Catholicism where it's deemed a sin. I mean,
Yeah.
in witchcraft, it's part of nature, so it's not.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%.
Were you ever an altar boy?
No.
Oh,
I actually wasn't. I was never an altar boy.
well, they might get some. I don't know.
Nope, I was never an altar boy. But no, so that'd be my answer. I think it's oddly the same in a weird way. I don't know.
So it's easy.
Yeah.
Switch over. There's no like guilt because I mean Catholics have sex. It's very taboo. It's very like between a husband and a wife.
100%. I was not raised Catholic. I was a convert, so I don't have that inborn like cradle Catholic guilt that they talk, like Irish Catholic talk about. Like that's foreign to me.
Do you have the inborn Catholic?
My family were Protestants.
My family was secular. I was raised by aliens and wolves. I don't have any of those problems.
But yeah, so Angel, it's a great question, but I was a convert, so I don't have that childhood like Catholic guilt kind of thing.
Yeah, missionary position. That's all you got if you're Catholic. Bam. One way.
Elie, already, you've made my evening.
I mean, that's okay for a little while, but later on you're thinking, I got to move around.
Gotta move around.
Can't we use some other pieces of furniture
Some other pieces of furniture. But yes,
besides the bed?
I answered that exotic question. Thank you, Angel.
Thank you, Angel.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I love this show.
Blessed be, Angel.
Blessed be you guys.
Bye.
Blessed be. See you soon at HexFest.
Bye.
She made her ask Elie a question.
She did.
She didn't need to ask Elie a question. She already said I can't ask her one.
Elie, do you miss me?
Crazy.
I can't hear what she.
What now?
Elie, do you miss me? There's my question.
I miss you so
There you
much.
go.
I can't wait to see your two front teeth because they match my two front teeth. They're going to kiss when we see each other.
Oh, I'm excited.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
I love that.
Carrie, too. Carrie's front teeth, man. We are soul
Here it
sisters.
is. Well,
on that.
I'm pretty sure she's on the line. Hold on.
Okay.
Carrie,
Hello,
Okay.
blessed be.
blessed be, you beautiful thing. I have to tell you, the auto screener.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sure you said your witchcraft, but if you look at it, all it says is Carrie, your witch crap.
My witch crap. I'm here to talk about.
It's what it
my
picked up.
Crap. That's hilarious. That is hilarious. Will you all? I can see you all looking at it. So
That's great.
I'm watching at home with the fur babies, and my friend Krista's over here, and we're watching, and that's hilarious that it says witch crap.
It's your witch crap.
Makes me oddly happy. My witch crap. I mean,
It's
we don't have time for that. My gosh.
It's the new book, Carrie.
It is.
Witchcraft for
And
beginners.
it's the new book.
Witchcraft
The
for
new
beginners.
book. That's what I should write. That's the book I need to write.
Witchcraft. It's whatever you want
for
it
a
to
New
be.
Millennium by Carrie Ewers.
Yeah.
For a new millennium.
Witch crap I found on TikTok.
Get a great pen name for it, too.
Well, you all look glorious and beautiful. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
So I meant to call earlier, but full disclosure, I'm having some wine and tomorrow and was cooking dinner and then forgot. And I was like, oh, my gosh, I have to call in. So what are we talking about?
Well, people are just asking
What
us
can I ask?
questions about ourselves in the craft or our past in the craft. So it could be
Yeah.
anything, really.
I love it.
You get to ask
Okay.
us each a question.
Ask away.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, I love this. Okay, so Miss Elie, I have a question for you. So first, my beautiful Elie, I wanted to know not only what drew you to magic and witchcraft and that connection with something like beyond you, beyond ourselves, but particularly what really was helping you focus and was drawing you to Alexandrian witchcraft.
Well, it's a double question. I think early in my childhood, I recognized that our thoughts had power, and I watched the way I thought and what happened, and I saw other people's verbiage and then results, and I thought, oh, there's some connections between what we visualize and what happens. I thought that was really early. And then when I learned that magic was about that, I thought that was the way to go and study. I think Alexandrian witchcraft is the same as Brian answered. I just met some really lovely Alexandrian witches who are also very well-trained occultists and well-read, and they knew their
Absolutely.
history. And I was
Blessed
like,
be,
wait a
absolutely.
minute, these are my people. This is real good stuff. Whereas a lot of eclectic witchcraft groups that I've met over many years, lovely as they may be,
Sweet people.
didn't have a cohesive system, not very much thought out dogma or philosophy. I didn't really come into any witchcraft groups that taught hermetics and real study. So that's what drew me, was the intellectual side of it. And of course, once you get in, you know the power. That's what keeps me there.
It's a beautiful thing, power and beauty.
Right, and freedom.
I love that.
And we'll
I
see
love
what's
that. Thank
next.
you,
That's
Elie.
what Brian says too. What's next on our journey? Wow, all kinds of things could be happening
Past
next.
life
for us.
Absolutely.
regressions.
We're going to bring
We're
back.
gonna
you know,
obsessed
all-
with them.
All things can happen for us, and I think that's such a gift as initiates and as people, magical practitioners that are trained in craft, and especially like our craft. There's such beautiful focus and personal responsibility, and I feel like there are so many rewards beyond just what people think that we do or how that we act. My next question is for Brian. At an early age, Brian, or when did this happen? When were you drawn to witchcraft, and especially Alexandrian witchcraft? Like, what were were there things, triggers, like things that happened in your life that led you on this path? Like, what was the catalyst where you knew this was the right choice for you, and that you wanted to teach it and like seed our tradition in the world?
Well, it's a very long question, so I'll try to be brief.
It was.
Section.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I think I always, and I was thinking about this earlier, I think I always sort of believed in magic on some sort of subconscious level, even though the world told you it wasn't real. I think I believed it was real since I was a child. And I without getting into my whole childhood, I definitely had the encouragement of imagination and the exploration of imagination within my childhood. So I was able to study a lot of different things in that way. But I think, as far as like witchcraft, it was Raymond Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft was the point in which witchcraft became religious to me. Before that, witchcraft was just magic to me, and I was exploring. But that was the book that introduced me to the idea of the goddess. And then I began reading anything I could get my hands on. I was very fortunate in my early teens to be near a used bookstore that had tons and tons. Don't know where they came from. I remember the owner once said they were some college students. He thought they had a group, but they were used books, and they had all of the old books that were out of print at the time. So at that time, you couldn't get these books.
Fantastic.
So I started reading What Witches Do I Have Now is still the one I got in that bookstore, as well as my Mastering Witchcraft and all of them. I probably got them from the donations from the same people. But I collected all these books and I read them. And I do remember very much being in love with the imagery of the Alexandrian pictures and being very much in love with Maxine and Alex. And I remember thinking, this is a long time ago. These people are in England. I'll never meet anyone like this. And I remember desiring that off and on, and certainly where I came from, it didn't exist. There weren't any legitimate Alexandrians or Gardnerians in the Northwest. So I think there are some in Seattle now and where I come from now because of me. But, really there just wasn't any. I'm sure somebody's moved there or whatever, no functioning known groups.
Right.
So you got what you got. And the coven that was most legitimate there was called the Northern Gate Coven, and the woman was, connected to the Covenant of the Goddess. But so there was some history within that group that seemed pretty impressive. And I think they were probably working from Lady Sheba's book, honestly. But now that I know what I know now, but in any case, that's where it all began. But I think I always desired it, and then somehow, some way, I ended up someday in a circle with Maxine Sanders. So that's magic, So I mean, you never can underestimate
magic.
How many years, the gods are real, the journey's real, initiation's real, and I'm still sort of shocked by it, to be honest with you. But
in a past life,
yeah.
you could have put those books in that bookstore for yourself.
Absolutely.
That's what we
That's
believe,
true.
though.
That's very true.
Witches come
I don't
around.
think the books were
right?
that old.
I know, but you could have set
I
it
still
up.
love the concept, though. It's a beautiful
But you could set
concept.
it up
Well, there was
where, you could keep helping yourself.
By the time we were born, me and Levi, there were Alexandrians that had died.
Me and Levi.
I don't know if there were for you or not, but
You and Levi,
I don't mean
I
it
love
to be shady. I just don't know.
Hey, I'm
what-
20 years older than they are. It's all right. I know.
There probably were, though. Definitely
I
were
love how Ellie's just
Gardnerians.
feeding into this lie.
Well, Gardner had just died. Like I said, he
That's
died
it.
9
Yes.
months
So
before I was
perhaps they
born.
were. And I will say I have intuitively known things about modern craft that I shouldn't have known.
Right.
You
That's
know,
right.
and that either that means it's older than it really is, or I'm just very intuitive, or maybe I was. Maybe I was a really exciting Alexandria that popped off in the 70s, or Gardnerian.
And just came right back. I was
There
like,
were
I'm not done.
Gardnerians that had died by the time I was
Yeah,
born,
right back.
too.
Boom.
I'm not done.
So who knows? Yeah.
Elie. Boom.
I do think if you practice a
happened?
system of reincarnation, you are more likely to reincarnate quickly.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah.
I believe that.
Sure.
Well, I love that. Thank you, Brian.
Don't really know that.
I have to say,
Sounds
that
good.
blue eyeshadow is giving me life. It looks amazing.
Isn't it
It
great?
looks fantastic, as always. So my final question, and then I will leave y'all alone. Well, it's for Levi, but I have a little comment to that. In
Gotta
my
throw in a
journey
little
as an
shade
Alexandrian
first.
priestess and my training, like the gifts that it has given me in my life and the clarity and the precision, I'm eternally grateful for. And it's actually really hard for me sometimes to remember my life before I was an Alexandrian initiate. So I don't know if other initiates feel that way, but that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question is for Levi.
Hello, darling.
Levi, I'm enjoying your occult floral that you have on tonight.
It's a
It is
floral.
wonderful. You look very handsome. So you've had this beautiful journey as an Alexandrian initiate and a high priest and an author and, hiving off and having your own coven. I was curious, like, how do you feel or what do you think your journey is, like, what's coming up for you and as an Alexandrian high priest and an initiate? Like,
How's it been
what do you-
going?
Good
How's it been
question.
going?
What's
I
coming-
think
oh,
it
I can't-
is-
I love this. What's coming up for you?
My hope is that it's just a further descent into religious madness. I just want
Yes.
it's all going to
Trust
end.
me.
yes.
It's all going to end with me in a field and trying to make the crops grow and some poor person screaming, and it's going to be very Harvest Home. You know what I mean?
I mean,
and,
it's very
it's the aesthetic. It's going to be very Harvest Home. And the novel, not that god awful TV show from the 70s with Betty Davis.
I loved Betty Davis. in
It's
that show.
but it's
It
going to be
came to
Oh, Betty
see.
Davis is everything,
Let
but I
him
get it.
see.
the dark. But that's the goal. The goal is sort of just a descent into fanaticism. Hopefully, I'm kidding, of
Much
course.
nicer.
I want that for you.
I want that for me, too.
Me. I want that for all of us.
No, I don't think.
Like,
that's
I feel
the
like,
truth.
when people think that they think they know what Alexandrians do, and they don't unless you're oath-bound and initiate. You have no idea what we do. But we should just start giving people copies of Harvest Home. Just like, this is it.
This is it.
Harvest
This is
Home.
how
This
it
is our Book of
goes.
Shadows. Here you go.
I do
is where it ends
remember when Levi was first waiting for his initiation, somebody from school or whatever had asked him, "How do you know they don't worship the devil?" And he said, "Well, I won't know till February."
I was true. I said, they said, did you guys worship the devil? I said, I won't know until February because I was initiated at Candlemas. Yeah, and so I said that to them. It was a running joke for a while. But no, that's the future, honestly, is just, I want to get to a point, I will say, where I love research. I do. I loved writing the Art Cosmic. I love all this traditional astrology. I love the
an amazing
grimoire
book.
tradition. It's all great. All great. Big fan.
He loves being smart.
Love the smarts, right? Love the books. But I will say the
Smart.
more I teach and stuff, the more I just enjoy being a witch.
Get
I
to
think
it.
part of the future is just being a witch, right? You just it's the Sabbats, it's the circles, it's the teaching, it's the living it. You don't really
Yeah, living it.
yeah.
Real
It's
deal.
just it's. I feel like a lot of eclectics and neo pagans or contemporary pagans, I should say. And this is not shade, even though it's going to sound like it, but they're always on this like perpetual quest for like. It's like, this week I'm into this, and next week I'm into that. I'm like, it's cool. I love that. Stay curious, everyone. But at some point, like, aren't you just sort of living your religion?
You just
Just
don't
do it.
understand
Just do it.
us. I mean, TikTok's a very different world.
Poor
Yeah, that's
Brian, knows Gen Z, so he's struggling.
One day it's sage, and then the next 30 seconds it's a crystal.
Yeah.
You get your eyeliner
But no.
right.
Well,
Same.
that's one of the.
No one has
I
time
agree with
for
you,
real
Levi.
rituals and
One of those things, like, it's we just have to give people the space to be wrong. And I
Yeah.
said it, and I will die on that hill. One of my
bless them.
favorite things that Brian, you've ever said to me, witchcraft is an aristocracy. So you got to decide, where do you want to live? And I know where I want to live, and it's in a world of Alexandrian witchcraft. And this isn't disparaging anybody else's traditions.
No.
This is just what I know is right for me.
Same.
Blessed be Carrie.
Blessed be.
Blessed be Carrie.
Blessed be. I love you all. I've kept you all. I'm going to go back to hanging out with Krista and the fur babies and making some blackened tuna.
Sounds
But
great.
I love you all.
Delicious.
Blessed be, and I will see you
Blessed be.
soon.
See you
Blessed
soon.
be.
Hey,
We do have a question in the comments that I wanted to look that I think is a good one to address, just because we are talking about it so much, which is it's a two-parter, but how do you become Alexandrian? And then follow up, how do you make sure that you're seeking out something legitimate? It's a question we've answered a lot, but since we have people watching and we're talking about it, it's important.
you want to start?
I mean, you seek out a legitimate coven. That's the only way. We don't have independent. Every witch can practice some form of magic alone, but our religion requires lineaged covens, which you seek out. And the number one way that that's done is through social media nowadays. I will say this is a question we get a lot, but I feel like it's a question that's rather unimportant and not to be mean, but the reason is because it is so easy in the beginning to, like, you can smell when somebody's not legitimate. They do not have connection to any of the groups. They can't mention where they come from.
Do it.
They can't vouch anything. It's
real.
Once you just make the plunge and say, okay, I want to do this. I want to be an Alexandrian or Gardnerian. It happens pretty quickly that you can find the groups. That's just the truth.
Well,
my biggest advice would be, there are plenty of, famous in the witch world, Alexandrians and Gardnerians.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them have social media. If you don't want to go through some sort of Facebook group, you could ask one of them, somebody that you know. So basically the idea of vouching is somebody real telling you somebody else is real, and that's the way it's done. I would never advise someone to go into a coven unless they could prove that they were Gardnerian or Alexandrian, because there are fakes, unfortunately. And the last thing you want to see is somebody spend a year, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years in something that isn't real to begin with. Because covens practice in secret, and because we're autonomous, there's no one checking up most of the time. If you're in a coven and it's not real and you're not talking to anyone else, you're not going to have any way of knowing, really. So it's a really great place to victimize people. Fortunately, the Gardnerian and Alexandrian tradition have a lot of tools at their disposal nowadays that, we can find out.
Yeah.
You just can.
It's pretty easy.
And unfortunately, if it comes to a point where you can't find out, then you're just not going to recommend,
Mm-hmm.
And, we usually don't know what each other actually do in circles. So I'll often say, well, they're real. I don't know anything about their training, because if I don't know about their training, I'm not going to say, yeah, go there. But if they're real, I'll say they're real, whether I like them or don't like them, or whatever the case would be. Because I do realize in this country, which is very different than the UK, we're very big, and most states don't have anyone. Mm-hmm. Most states don't have any Gardnerians or Alexandrians. Right. And then some states have a cluster of them. We've got 2 covens now here in New Orleans. The East Coast area has clusters of both groups.
Yeah, New York.
It's just depends on where you are, unfortunately. We're in the South, so witchcraft is, this is, I wouldn't call it the Bible Belt, but it's the next best thing, really. So it's, we're far and few between. We've got some in Florida. We've got us here in New Orleans. There are people that claim it in Louisiana I couldn't vouch for. They seemed weird to me. Some places, we've got them in Chicago, so we're here. If you go to the UK is the Haiti of witchcraft. So you find witches from everywhere, from London to Ireland. They're everywhere. There are towns like Boscastle that are completely centered on witchcraft, so it's not hard. And they all know each other, so they're not like as weird as we are about that sort of thing. They don't keep long lineage papers. They'll just say, where do you come from? Oh, the Shropshire Coven. Oh, okay, I know who to call there. Check out,
it's much smaller
country. And people, and it's been going on longer. Even though Elie was reading this stuff, modern witchcraft didn't really manifest in the United States till the 70s.
Right.
So in any sort of real way. And then it was still very small.
Very.
It took till the 80s and 90s for it to generate what it was, and most of it was self-starter-up groups.
Yeah.
Whereas the UK had been going strong since the 50s.
Right.
So I do want to answer Peggy's question, which was, what book would you recommend for somebody interested in Alexandrian craft? Brian wrote a book called Initiation into Witchcraft. It's available through Warlock Press. You can get it through Hex and Omen. You can get it through Amazon. But after you read that, I would also really recommend reading some of the original material that came out of the witchcraft revival, like Gardner, and then, eventually Lois Bourne and Patricia Crowther. And, I just really recommend getting that before you spread. But my third thing I'll say before I pass the baton is, so yes, Brian's book, absolutely. Brian Cain, you can find it It's wonderful.
I'd say
Highly
if you
recommend.
could get the first edition of What Witches Do.
Yeah, What Witches Do would be fabulous.
I haven't read the other editions, but they did change.
Yeah, when it was, yeah. But I will say this. I actually have an unpopular opinion that has developed over my years of being an initiate. You don't need that many initiatory books. You do not need to read a ton of books on witchcraft because after a point, they're all the same. Like after a point, the ones that are like, I'm going to teach you about the elements 400 times. I'm going to teach you about what herbs and candle magic and crystals are 400 times. There is a story that Maxine used to recommend when asked what book to read. Dune, the sci-fi novel Dune.
She actually still says if you want to know the spirit of witchcraft, that is the book.
Yeah,
or Spirit of Alexandrian Witchcraft.
I'm not here repping for
she's
Frank
talking
Herbert
about
or
the
whatever. Frank Herbert.
Jesuits. Like we all know, she talked about the Jesuits.
She's talking about the Kwisatz
the
Haderach
rarity
and all that.
of the spirit of it.
Yeah.
Though.
But I would actually recommend, like I said, I really recommend Brian's book, really recommend The Elders. But after that, take a break and just read some really good fiction and poetry. Like get yourself inspired. Read inspirational, sort of amazing Sufi poetry and the mystics. Read the mystics and all their weird crap and, when their visions were coming.
But, going to be the devil's advocate. I happen to know this young man had read everything under the sun.
It's true.
By the time he came along to us. He was he was as educated as you could be about BTW without being initiated. And I do recommend people read some BTW books because I want them to have some idea of what they're getting into.
Oh, I gave some. Yeah.
And to Levi's point, in a way, I think this is the point you're making. There are actually no books, really, on Alexandrian craft or Gardnerian craft. There are books written by Alexandrians and Gardnerians. And I think some books give the spirit of it a bit more than others. But so that's the only reason I recommend it, but basically, if you believe in the great goddess and her consort lover, the horned god of death and resurrection, and you believe in magic and you're obsessed to be involved in a secret priesthood about these concepts, you're probably on the right track.
Yeah. What would you say, Elie?
Well, I have read everything. I don't think there's any Alexandrian or Gardnerian writers or books that talk about the real inner tradition work. There just aren't.
No.
They talk about the arts, like astrology, herbalism, poetry. Those are the arts of witchcraft or in the occult, but they're not the real working. They're not the real working of it. You can't get that close to it unless you really do it and be initiated. I think that's the way it should be. I think it is to be found in fiction, though, because you're elevated into a different realm.
What are some of our best fiction books? Dune.
I mean, honestly, it's not even so much that I think it has to be something similar to us. I think it's just training your mind to be imaginal.
I like Star Wars
mythology.
As a metaphor.
That's somebody in the comments was like, Star Wars explains our religion.
Mythology books and history
books. The Sith
books.
and the Jedi are like each other in almost every way.
But no, I think honestly the reason I recommend it is because it puts you in an imaginal place where you can use your mind and you can visualize and you can really think about experiential reality, like the experience of reality. I would liken it, not to be tacky for a second or whatever, but I would liken it to sex in the sense of reading about it will never be the same as encountering it.
Levi's been obsessed with sex since he was Catholic.
Never.
This is becoming a running theme on this show that I do not want to be on my public
The
face.
Duchess has feelings.
That nickname never caught on, and I'm very proud of everyone for not letting it happen.
I don't know. I heard Patrick quite liked it.
Yeah, it did not catch on, though. We do have a call.
Everyone start calling Levi.
Hi, is this Alan?
Blessed be.
Blessed be. How are you?
Alan, yay.
I'm good. I love Dune.
The Kwisatz Haderach.
Well, me and Alan have the Masters of the Universe.
The Orange
Doesn't
Zen
love
Catholic
Dune.
Bible. Isn't that what their book is called? The Orange Zen Catholic Bible?
By the way, that Havoc staff
space
made you look
witches.
terribly short.
What were your questions, Mr. Allen?
Oh, I suppose my question is for all of you. The same question, just because I'd like to hear your different answers. In your experience, what makes a good initiate, and what makes a bad initiate?
The gods.
And have you found yourself being both of those? And what have you learned from both of those?
Those are multiple questions.
Is that too much?
It's
Somebody's got the gunny.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
Me.
Go ahead, Ellie.
I have never been a bad initiate.
Right out the gate.
I believe that, Ellie.
I believe
Every
it too.
day,
I
every
definitely-
day I wake up and
I
I
actually
say,
believe that of all of you.
no, I say, dude, man, I'm being the best initiate I can be today. All
Just
the
full
way.
Julie Andrews, practically perfect in every way.
And that's all I know about the question. I forgot the rest of them, but that's for sure. I'm always good at
Ellie's
every
answer is,
day.
I
I was
have
like,
never
I'm a
been
good
bad.
girl.
I'm a good girl and
No,
I've
I'm a
never
good
been bad.
girl.
initiate. I'm a good initiate. That doesn't always say like a princess of goodness, but it's like a warrior of power. Yeah,
Okay.
me.
Brian,
All right. Well, there's a lot of questions.
what makes
there.
a good initiate? What makes a bad initiate? Have you been those things?
Well,
Yeah.
as a teacher, what makes a good initiate is, I think, somebody who's, really thirsty for it, and they will drink every drop, because they're the ones who are going to take the ball and run with it, the ones who really want the information. They're as obsessed with it as I was. They're the ones
Right.
who, the fanatics.
Shiite Alexandria.
Yes, these two, right here. The fanatics are really good because they're really good students and they really want to know everything and they want to know. So a student that's sincere and wants to know. I suppose
That's why I travel.
Yes, I suppose a bad initiate would be one who doesn't really want to know, who's doing it for social reasons or political reasons
Publicity.
or whatever else. I haven't really encountered that. I think that most all of the initiates I've worked with, and I'm not going to say how many now, but there's been quite more than I thought when I looked it up the other night.
Sure.
So, I've got a few, under my wing now, and really there's only two that I can think of that I would even edge at being bad, and one was unfortunately just a little mentally ill, so that wasn't their fault, I don't think. And probably just wasn't quite geared for it. And the other one, I think that one's bad because that one is veered off the path for Malkuth. I don't think that they're really serving the gods. I don't think there's sincerity there. But those are just two experiences out of a whole lot of experiences. And I still wouldn't say either one of those were what I would say is bad. Bad would be an oath breaker. Of which there are plenty on the internet. So their peers won't call them out because then they could be called out too. We can all decide what an oath breaker is in a separate conversation. But I think that that's probably what I classify as bad. Have I ever been good or bad? Well, I think I'm either terribly good or terribly bad. But I don't like being mediocre.
What is that great line?
Ooh, yeah,
either
no
be
mediocre.
There's a great line that's like either be good or be good at it. Right? Those are the
So
those
when
are your
I
two
am
options.
bad, Alan, I'm very bad.
Those are your two
I
options.
think you're all probably good and have been good initiates. That's why you're still there.
Good.
That's why you're still there.
Everything is proceeding.
Everything
to
is
my
proceeding
design.
as planned. I think a good initiate.
Wait.
What?
I don't want to be good. I'm evil.
Jesus. Enough. I would say what makes a good initiate is it's a hard question, to be honest. I think what makes a good initiate is the desire to be a good initiate. Witchcraft is a choice. That's the
Initiation.
Initiation is always a choice. I know that a lot of people in the magical community have a mythology, a personal mythology that basically I think does come from fiction. It's a trope in fiction. It's the trope of the chosen one, right? I am the chosen one. I was born special. I'm God's gift to mankind.
Yay.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but that's a toxic mentality in the grand
born
scheme.
special.
I know you
I
think
was
that,
born
darling.
special.
Levi's really
But-
just trying to school me subconsciously.
But I think you've desired to be an initiate almost your whole life.
Oh, I did, yeah.
I think that the desire to be one and the conscious decision to be one is what makes a good one.
I thought
think.
you meant about the chosen one.
Oh no.
Good answer.
A bad initiate.
We all know Ellie's the chosen one.
She is. She is. She'll bring forth the Dark Lord soon. Thank God. But a bad initiate, I think, is made when someone enters the circle with spite. I guess I would say a sort of spite towards the experience because they're better than it.
Jealousy.
They think that the gods are not real, and they think that it's all something that they can use. And I think it usually burns them up in the end.
Burns them up. There's
I think
no
that
way-
happened to Crowley.
Good
I know he wasn't
Because
an
you have to tap
Alexandrian,
into
but
it.
I think that happened to Crowley.
There's no way around it.
I really do.
You've got to have a balanced ego. There's no way you can't have a balanced
No,
ego.
I think it's
and be well.
poisonous
and be well.
in the end. But that'd be my answer.
Witchcraft will use anyone. to
Well, thank you.
survive.
Those
You're
are
very
wonderful
welcome.
answers.
And thank you for calling in.
Thank
Blessed
you,
be
Alan.
Alan.
Be.
Blessed be.
Have a good night. See you soon.
Boom. I think we've missed a few from the comments. I'm going to look back.
I
Are
love that.
those all
though.
calls?
I do think when we
I'll tell you later.
are initiated and we really get into the work, it's a whole new world.
It's a whole new world.
Experience and devotion, and your energy is different. Your heart is different. I don't see how anyone could really do the work fraudulently. They'd be kicked. Wouldn't they be spit out?
They have been. A lot of the people who really stepped against the tradition and spoke out, and I'm not trying to say this for some sort of paranoid superstition, but I will say they don't end well.
Well, it's against their oaths, really, isn't
And
it?
it's
Right,
like you're
right.
it's just it's like life. It's not even just
That's
about
why I
witchcraft.
don't worry about it. I found that, the craft is a power unto itself. It's generated this power over years, through all kinds of different mediums before any of us were born.
So Gawain has a two-part question that I think is interesting. The first one is can you speak to any hardship or adversity that might have pushed you towards craft or initiation? And the second part is, do you think a person could be, and they did put this in quotes, so I don't think they're being literal, but a person could be so tainted or disempowered or too damaged for initiation?
First
so
of all,
it's a two-part.
yes, I do think
I do too. I have.
there
something
are
to say about
individuals
that.
that are not suitable for initiation. And of course, that's not up to me as a sole individual. That's up to me and Elie in our coven and Levi in his coven. And we're not going to say, sorry, you're so mentally ill, we're not going to initiate you. We're going to say something kind. That's what we would do, regardless of what it is. It's not to say that all mental illness makes you non-applicable, but I probably would not initiate a schizophrenic. That sort of mental disability is, in my mind, too profound for the arts magical, and I would feel like I was irresponsible.
Agreed.
I know it's in PC to deny anyone
No, it's not.
anything.
I don't even think this is about PC language at all.
yeah.
No.
I think this is a kindness.
I mean, I believe magic is real and can be dangerous.
I think it'd be
So,
harming certain people to bring them into craft.
And we
I
could
would
say
do that.
at the time they're maybe not well
What was
enough.
the other part?
The other part was, can you speak to any adversity or
For me
that pushed
personally,
you towards craft?
the only thing I can think of is I definitely think I had a sour taste in my mouth about patriarchy, but I think a lot of people do. And I think, growing up in a childhood where I had a experience with patriarchy that was less than impressive, and always sort of saw the female side of things as being better, may have made me more prone to enjoying being drawn to worshiping the goddess. So that's it, though, really. But it wasn't any sort of weird hardship. I'd say, I'm a mama's boy, so I loved my mother, and I had a bad relationship with my father. So in that sense,
my mom.
psychologically,
I didn't like either one of my parents.
I guess that could make sense to why I would gravitate towards worshiping the goddess.
They're okay.
And I struggled at
loves
first
them.
in my formative years of craft before initiation with the god of the witches, because not only did he seem like the devil, but I was sort of fed up with the whole daddy knows best thing anyway. But in time, the craft created a balance for me, and it's no longer an issue. So if there was an issue going in, I think it's been well healed.
Love that answer. Elie, did you have something you wanted to say about the whole adversity and also people being too far, perhaps, in a certain way?
Did the question use the word tainted?
Yes, the question used the word tainted. In quotes, though.
Yeah, I get that. I'm struggling with that. I would say we should all look at individuals at the time, because there's always healing and work and medicines and things that we're doing to improve our mental health, and I believe in that. But the pressures that come to bear on a person in an initiated tradition, not just witchcraft, but other ones, are powerful and strong, and you need a structure to withstand that warp, that push that's going to come on your being of belief, of energy flow, of manifestation
Other
in your
people.
work, other people. And if you're not,
And the awareness that you will be challenged.
yeah, and if you're not emotionally pretty balanced and okay with yourself and physically and mentally well in a physical way, because witchcraft particularly is of the earth, Malkuth. If you can't really work in the physical world, it's going to be a much harder path for you. So I wouldn't say that forever they are tainted, but we would
I wouldn't use that word at all.
Yeah, no, but we would be very seriously looking at people who come to us, not for one day, for weeks or months, to ascertain how strong they are.
I'm going to throw in a fly in this ointment, though. I am going to throw a fly in this ointment. I do not know a single initiate personally who could not probably be diagnosed with a mental illness from the DSM. None. Like, I don't know any. If you told people that you had visions of aliens as a child, they would tell you that you have a mental disorder.
Don't even tell me what you think.
What is
narcissism?
My mental?
Yours would be narcissistic personality disorder.
What is my disorder?
Now I know what he really
they would tell you
thinks
that it's
about
not real. So, like, I would say I want to be very careful about what we're saying here. Also, I'm not a big fan of when the whole concept is mental illness. That's an enormous umbrella.
What would yours be?
So, like, obsessive compulsive disorder, which I do have. Mine is I have OCD, but that's not a joke. But I would say this:
a touch of neurotic.
Yeah, neurotic anxiety disorders. I do have an anxiety disorder too. I have a lot of mental illnesses, and most initiates I know do. To be frank,
we're not talking about that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
We're talking about severe.
What we're talking about is I would not put somebody in my circle for whom I thought my circle would harm them.
Depression isn't going to keep you out.
No.
You know?
Like, I would never put someone in my circle that I thought what we were going to do was going to harm them.
We wouldn't do it.
Right? And I think people who are really struggling to ground themselves and who are, perhaps not ready for that, to put them in that circle, I think would be cruel.
I will say
irresponsible.
this, though, to give you a bit of a history lesson, and I don't want you to take this as an Alexandrian rule. This was an Alex Sanders rule. So we all get to function and run our covens the way they want, because none of this is from the Book of Shadows. He would not initiate someone who was a butcher. He would not initiate anyone who was a mortician.
Yep.
He would not initiate a drug addict. He would not initiate severely mentally ill people, or severe alcoholics by British standards.
Which is a little different.
Also physical disability in some cases, right?
Severe physical disability, but that was really kind of a minor one because I've never actually heard it mentioned in that way, but that it was severe because you had to be able to do the job. And once again, it's not very PC, but they don't usually accept people with no arms and legs into the Catholic training program for their priesthood because you can't function.
They just don't talk about it publicly, though.
Well, of course they don't. And we really don't either, unless you're hanging out with Elie. She'll highlight everything like that. Like, what about the no-arm people?
What about the no-arm people?
What about Alex's grandma? What about him? What's going on with that?
But I will say, I'll let you finish. I don't want to interrupt.
No, it's good, though. It's good. It's better to face those things.
But deep care for the individual who's seeking, we want to try to help
it
that
isn't,
person.
It isn't up to any person that's
right
dead or anything. There's nothing in our liturgy that says you have to decline someone for something.
No, and I also think there's plenty of room to grow. You might say to a candidate, I see some things that might be an
Elie
issue.
and I won't initiate the terribly ugly. We don't want to look at them.
You've said this so many times on here. It's like your perpetual cruelty. I love it.
We're not going to initiate the
here's the thing that
ugly.
Super needs to be.
You could take that to philosophical.
Here is something that
maybe I'm quoting Plato.
Needs to be highlighted, though. If you were listening to Brian, what he said was, these were things that Alex did. These are not rules within initiatory craft. Like,
some Alexandrians follow them because they agree with them.
But someone, for example, in the comments was talking about not initiating morticians. This comes from Egyptian mythology and the priest of life and death and all that. And
very divided.
The hanged man, the whole thing of
Alex's belief
curses.
Was because Alexandrian witchcraft is a fertility cult, that someone who was that much around death and suffering would bring that energy into the circle, and he wanted no part of it. Alexandrians do have a taboo about bringing death into the circle because we are a fertility cult. Doesn't mean we don't acknowledge death. But it's not a craft rule.
No,
that was his rule.
You have to be careful with, a lot of times you'll encounter blanket statements on the internet. And they're not really true. And there's nothing to back them up. So people will say, like, well, they don't initiate X, Y, or Z, like the physically handicapped or the mentally ill. Or
and there are some that don't.
And maybe
most of them aren't talking about whys. That, when you're talking about a coven, you're talking about something that's run out of somebody's private home.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have their own beliefs and prejudices just like you do. Just like everyone on here, there are people you would not let in your house. Like everyone watching this has certain kinds of people they would not let into their home.
Like people in pleated pants and Jehovah's Witnesses.
Whatever your gig is. Like
Plaid. I don't
like
like plaid
Crocs. Like I don't want to know anyone that wears Crocs really.
Pleated pants.
Ooh, no
Jehovah's
Crocs.
Witnesses.
I agree.
There's a lot of groups.
No Crocs, no plaid.
And not that I'm shading the JWs. It's just, don't knock on my door.
So,
I don't
just
like
put it into
smelly.
perspective instead of trying to make it this big thing that's not.
Yeah.
But occultists have their own spiritual ideas, and I don't knock Alex for any of his. I haven't been faced with it. If I had a mortician ask, I'd have to really
we'd talk
evaluate
about it.
them as a human being.
We talk about
Would it be a red flag for me? Absolutely, because it's kind of a hard thing to get out of your head. It must be a little weird to be a mortician.
But again, it is. We do have a call, but yeah. So do that thing. So let me answer. Hi, is this Marcy?
Yes, blessed be.
Blessed be. How are you?
Good. How are y'all?
Hit or miss.
Good. I'm great.
Is that your answer tonight? Hit or
Always.
miss?
I answer that question all the time. Hit or miss. Don't tempt the gods, people.
So my question is for all of you guys, being that you all have traveled around the world extensively, what is your favorite sacred site?
I love
We
this.
have the same ones, don't we?
Oh man.
You want to start?
Okay, let's do it in different places though. Like pick your spot in England, pick your spot in Greece.
I'm going to pick my spot in England. I'll tell you exactly what happened to me. Ooh, 2 things. Oh man, I got some good stuff.
What's your favorite place,
Ellie,
Can I
you
go
go
first?
first,
Okay, it's
yeah.
2 things, both in England. Stonehenge, and because I'd never been there, I'd seen pictures of it all my life. And we were with a historian gentleman who was driving myself, my mother, my daughter, and 2 of our friends, Wendy and Emily, to Stonehenge. And we stayed overnight in a B&B, and we had to get up before dawn to get out there before the tour groups because we had a private inner tour, which was so rare that it was arranged. But so we're driving on the Salisbury Plain. It's some sort of M road in England. It's the 4-lane roads. There's hardly any highways there, but there's like finally a 4-lane highway where you can drive 60 miles an hour. And we're looking out the window, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Stonehenge pops up on the horizon.
Salisbury Plain.
And I saw it, and I was like, oh my God. And tears just poured out of my face. And I was like, I cannot believe I am seeing this in person. And then the next morning I got up and I went there, and oh my God, I loved it so much. The second place I loved, well, 2 more. Avebury, super powerful, energetic, magnetic experience there. And then the Rollright Stones, we were very naughty. We snuck behind bushes and stayed after it closed and didn't leave.
What were you doing in the bushes?
Waiting for them to close and going away. The history guides that watched the spot. And then we had private ritual at the Rollright Stones, and it was really good.
Beautiful. What about you, Brian? What are your favorite
Are
places?
you done? Was that? What about your other places?
That
Greece.
was it. No,
Those were her
I'm
2
just kidding. I'm
things?
just
She's just
I'm
picking-
just England. I'm just
Well,
England.
I was going to do one of each, but it was kind of harder. I was sitting to think about it. So in the UK, I saw so many sites. Unfortunately, I don't remember all their names because it was like a blur, which is
So
very
many
good
of them,
itself.
too. So many.
But Stonehenge, yes, it was a surprise. I didn't expect Stonehenge to
Agreed.
actually have
Right,
power. I thought
right.
it was going to be very commercial.
Commercial, yeah.
And then my second one there would be a place called Wayland Smithy that had a real zap to it.
Yes.
In Greece, it was really Eleusis.
Oh, yeah.
But I also loved the Parthenon. And in Egypt, it's actually, without a doubt, hands down, the island of Philae, even though it's moved.
Oh, wow.
But also the Giza pyramids were surprising, and Hatshepsut's temple.
Oh, yeah, her funerary temple. It's so pretty.
It's the whole valley, though. It's not just that thing.
And then all the
but
Sekhmet's engraved.
I will say, well, that's a lot, so I don't want to keep going on. But those are some of my favorite spots.
My favorites are, number 1 is probably the Temple of Isis at Philae, and I collected Nile
was
River
probably
water that I
number
brought
one,
back
too.
in my luggage from there, and
I have
it is
some.
moved because of the creation of Lake Nasser, so it's not the original site, but the original Holy of Holies is there. The original altar stone is there, where they would have kept the the inner
I got to
sanctum.
go to the original site, but it's...
But yeah, where they
Yeah.
moved it because of the lake. But I would say the Temple of Isis at Philae is very high up there. Eleusis as well, so I would agree with Brian there. So we had 2 of the same ones. I really, really loved Stonehenge, but I would also add, and this is a weird one, Notre Dame in Paris.
I love Notre Dame.
And the reason is because it's actually very old.
Oh, there's a temple underneath
pagan.
it.
Yeah,
And
and it's got a lot of pagan ruins beneath
That's
it.
where
Which
the Cernunnos.
I was not. I was not an initiate when I was in Notre Dame. I was actually not religious. I had taken a step back, and I went into Notre Dame. It's very touristy. It's always packed. It's kind of miserable, and I don't know why. They were practicing. The choir was practicing at the time. I was in Paris for Christmas, so that was a big deal because I lived in France for a year, and the beauty of like the old, unbelievable workmanship that went into create it, the belief behind it, the desperation. I don't know.
1,000 years.
It's just, it's a very powerful place actually. As hokey, I had the same reaction that I did at Stonehenge, where I was like, I don't expect this to be impactful, and then it was super impactful.
Yep.
So it was a big one for
Karnak
me.
was cool too.
I love
There were
Karnak.
so many places it's hard, and England, the UK is harder for me because I don't know the names of many of the places we visited. But there was some dark stuff there.
All
too.
of Egypt. Like, let's just be honest. All of Egypt.
all of Egypt.
The Serapeum
Oh, I like
in
that.
Alexandria, and then my
When you
favorite.
meet the bull at the end, the apis. Yeah.
My favorite thing in Egypt, I think you went there too, Elie, was the Saqqara tombs, which are the very late stage Ptolemaic tombs.
Yeah, right.
And they have the Hermanubis
Yes.
carved into the walls.
Oh, yes, those are great.
I loved them.
There's a head of
Kom el Shokfa or whatever.
Head of Mark Anthony right
Yes.
outside, just sitting there. Mark Anthony.
I think it's called Kom el Shokfa in Arabic, which is like the smashed plates graves, I think.
Yes.
But oh god, that was one of my favorite places in
my
Egypt.
biggest surprise. Okay, so Christians tickle pink about Egypt is it fits the whole bill. So you can really feel the separation. The West Bank is where they put all their dead in the funerary temples, and to this day people don't live there. And on the East Bank is where they had all their temples of Isis, temples of Ra, the regular gods and the regular priests, right? So I thought it was amazing. But when we went into one of the museums, there was a thing they had going on at the time where they had all the dead bodies of the pharaohs.
Yeah.
And
That wasn't.
I was.
when I was there. That wasn't
They
happening.
had all of them in there. Seti and Ramses. They were all laying out.
The mummies.
But this is before. I think they've moved them now. But the power generating off their bodies surprised me.
Oh wow!
It
Still,
surprised me.
I'm attracted to mummies. They've got power.
same. Can I ask-
I
Marcy-
normally don't like
Same.
them.
Marcy, can I steal your question and add an addendum to it?
I forgot Marcy was on the
Yeah,
phone.
what's up?
Me too.
Yeah.
I want
So
to
I'm going to add a question to Marcy's. First of all, this is
We've
my
had
favorite question all
champagne,
night.
Marcy.
This is my favorite question all night
Yeah.
because it's so like, I don't know, fun to talk about.
I want to add things.
What is a sacred site? You only get to pick one that you've not been to that is definitely on your list that is important to you spiritually.
The Dendera temple that we all missed.
Hathor,
for
the Temple of
Osiris,
Hathor.
But it's
I'm
associated
gonna-
with Osiris. One of them there's associated with Osiris too. I can't remember. I got
Okay.
the wrong one.
So that Brian's is still in Egypt. Okay.
I'm
That's
gonna-
one of them. God, is there another one?
You can give one or two. Just like what's one or two places that still is important to
I
you.
think I've seen all
I
the
want to go to
main
Machu
ones.
Picchu. I want to go to Machu Picchu in Peru.
That's a beautiful choice. I have two, and then I think I love really seeing
I'm
the
very
spiritual
European.
sides.
I don't think outside of Europe.
Rome is my number one, and then two is Kolkata to see the temples of
I
Kali.
totally
Oh, wow,
forgot to say this.
That's China's
One
one.
of my
Yes.
favorite places, Marcy, outside of all the ancient sites, is without a doubt Lake Nemi. And there's little left. There is a temple to Diana on the banks, but it's ruins. You can't really see much. It's all on the land of a house now. But the lake itself, it's a very magical place.
Yeah. Rome and Kolkata. Those are my two big
I want to
ones.
say something else for Americans. In the United States, the American Indian places, I think, are as powerful as anything in Europe. Mesa Verde, there's
The Black
different-
Hills,
There's
there's
different
so much power
places
there, is from what I've heard.
in the Four Corners, Utah and Arizona. There's Hopi reservations. There's Navajo reservations. There's
I think the difference is a lot of Native Americans
wow.
in
I
the
mean,
northern
incredible
tribes
stuff.
where we all come from, they didn't do land things because they were nomadic.
And it's also
Down
because
here,
they
Yes,
were
They were
moved.
the mound
Down
people.
south, we've got
They were the
a
mountain
place
people.
here I haven't been to, but it's the oldest historical site in North America.
Right.
They call it Poverty
Point. It's in Louisiana. I haven't
Yes,
been there
it's in
either,
Louisiana.
but we should go see
That's
it. We should go see
an
it.
interesting spot to visit for sure.
But what a great question. Thank you, Marcy.
What a great
Thank you,
question.
Marcy. Bless
And there's
you.
plenty
you're
of
welcome.
places in the
Blessed-
whole globe for us to go see and visit. We should always investigate our own state and find
Mind
out
going
what
to,
can
I'm
we
sort
do.
of curious about going to Sweden at this point in time.
Blessed be, Marcy.
Blessed be.
I do have one more question for you
Okay,
guys.
go away.
though.
Fire off.
Okay, just to add on to a sacred site that's in the United States, I know that it's known as an amphitheater in Colorado. It's a little town called Morrison. They have the Red Rocks Amphitheater and Park.
Yeah.
And that's one place that I've been that I'm like, wow, this place is special. This place has such an energy to it. It's very beautiful, and it's nice to go hiking and whatnot. So my second question is, what is your favorite piece, like most favorite, like you just almost always have to have it, or, you know, it's your go-to occult jewelry?
Oh.
Probably my Rosank. My other ones would be my very first pentagram and my very first piece of occult jewelry, which is a little brass pan. I gave Adam a silver one that looks just like it. That was my first piece of occult jewelry. So those are my three go-tos, I'd say.
I only wear the Ankh. That's it. Like I don't. I have a ring of power that I also wear sometimes. That's important to me. But
I do like my rings of power.
Frankly, I don't. I don't know why. I used to wear a lot of jewelry. I don't know why. It's just all fallen away except for the Ankh, and I literally wear it from the morning I wake up until I go to bed. Like there's never a day that I don't wear it. So that's the thing.
I normally wear my silver one whenever I leave the house. Yeah.
My
I'm
aunt
wearing the
hangs by
fancy
my
one
bed.
today. I can't see
talks
myself.
to me and says, Elie, put me on, get your Ankh. Don't forget me for hermetics, my aunt says.
I recently forgot mine, and I got to work, and I was like, something's wrong, and I was like, oh no. So yeah, I get that, Levi.
Yeah,
I've come to
like a
learn
key of
that you
life.
can tell something about Nishits by whether or not they wear their Rosank. You know, because the ones that I've known that didn't really wear theirs, well, they didn't stick around. It's true though.
I have The only time I will say it's different is if they're secret, right? If they're keeping it secret. But yeah, it's the one I wear.
I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. But it's the one it's the
But
thing
it
I
makes
wear.
sense psychologically, though, doesn't it? We're wearing it because we're proud to be Alexandrians.
Yeah.
You know, and
If we're talking about occult jewelry, I will say sometimes I like to have malas because I'm a nervous person, and sometimes like that sort of repetitive motion, and it'll allow me to focus a little. Like if I'm
because
using
of his mental disorder.
meditative, many, they're legion. But when I'm doing something meditative, sometimes I really enjoy them too.
That's my mental illness. We are legions.
But I hold my Rose Ankh, and I just that's the same thing for me. Like I just caress it a little bit.
I do it all the time.
I forget about my rings because I think
and
of
it
my
makes me
necklace as
calm.
being, but my other two favorite pieces of jewelry are obviously the Ring of Power that Levi was talking about. My other Ring of Power is a coin of Alexander the Great that was commissioned by Ptolemy.
Oh, yeah.
And Christian got this for me for a Christmas or a birthday, I can't remember. But it's interesting because when we were first vacationing in the Virgin Islands on St. John's, we were in this beautiful occult store, or not occult store, jewelry store, but they had occulty things. And there was a ring of Alexander the Great, and this is before I was Alexandrian. And I said, "Ooh, I'd really love that ring. That's a really cool ring." And Chris said, "Well, I don't know. That's bad mojo. He died when he was in his 30s." I said, "Yes, ruling the world. You know, like, let's not, everyone died in their 30s.
What's not to
back
like?
then.
He ruled the whole world.
Yes.
And
Life expectancy was
he
that
rode
long
an
back
elephant.
then. But, I like lots of pieces, but, I don't collect it like I used to. When I was younger, I collected silver occult jewelry because that's what we used to do.
All
back
my
then.
jewelry's in a safe deposit box in Pensacola, Florida.
Ooh,
I
we know
can't
where
bring
to
it
go
to New
now.
Orleans. I'll get
But
mugged.
for occult things, that's really it for me. Like I just
Levi's humble.
You guys, this time I said I'm not going to drink too much so I don't have to pee during the show, but it's unfortunately not true, and I still have to pee during the show. Okay, so
thank you, Marcy, so much for calling
will
in.
you guys please
Thank you,
talk
blessed be.
to
Thank
Brian?
you.
Guys,
Blessed
we've got-
be.
We got a little bit wild.
I know you
be.
can talk
Have
to
a good
Brian
night,
and
y'all.
Levi.
Bye.
Blessed
dear.
be.
I'm going to go back to the comments for a second because there were a few, and that way we can talk. Comments, he
I
says to
don't
me.
really see. I think the mustache makes me look distinguished and a bit mischievous.
I think you look like you own a haunted house in 1926, and that you're, sort of like having an affair with the stable
Somebody
keeper.
said the real Doctor Strange.
It's like you're having an affair with the stable keeper, and you've killed for it. You know what I mean? Like people have died. People have died in that house. It's not a good house. It's very big and very beautiful, and there's a lot of brocade, but like someone has died here, and it has been tragic. Like opera music playing, clawfoot tub, the pink water. You know what I mean? The whole scene.
Sounds pretty badass.
I know it's a very gothic romance novel, circa like 1886.
It is a lot of work, though, keeping it groomed.
Keeping it groomed.
They just keep growing. It's like having a bonsai tree on your face.
Oh my God! I don't.
Well, because I'm keeping mine in a certain form,
Yeah, from the 20s.
It's called a pencil mustache.
It's very dapper.
Oh, I like gentleman mustaches because I am a gentleman.
Trying
You
something
can't
new.
deny that. I'm a gentleman.
Trying something new, Brian.
I'm a gentleman. No one disputes me being a gentleman. I might be a gay gentleman, but I'm definitely a gentleman. With a healthy dose of narcissism. Just enough to where I don't care about idiots.
There were questions, but it's moved on past that at this point. Someone did ask about, like, sort of when Marcy was asking about favorites, Lillian asked about favorite songs and invocations. But the thing is I'm gonna, like, a lot of the invocations that I've written or used in Circle contain craft stuff, so like they're not really public. I couldn't tell you like what they are anyway.
I published some of the ones I've written. So in my book, back in the Grimoire, everything in there is stuff I wrote myself, except for the historic folk spells, which are classified as that. But all of the poetry and rituals were written by me. So some of them years ago. So I had a collection I drew from that I used for the book. I didn't write it all as I was writing the book, but some of them. So I've got stuff I've shared with people, but I actually put that out because, quite frankly, and this is my opinion, you'd be really good at this, Levi, because Levi is actually a very good poet. I'm kind of like I think a bit of a recreation of a Dorian Valiente, where Levi's a bit of a recreation of a real poet.
Oh, that's a very kind compliment. Thank you.
But I'm very good at the witchy end of it. But
and the mist descendeth. Like Brian can pull that off really well.
No, he does very classical poetry that's really well. So, but it's hard to find. So I used to love reading books and getting all the cool poems that were published, and I'd use them in my circles. And at a certain point, that stopped. So I wanted to offer a bit of poetry that people could use in their circles in that book. So, because that was the piece I was offering initiates or non-initiates, because they could take some of the poetry in my book and put it in a real witchcraft circle, or likewise, somebody could put it in their own circle. That didn't quite sound right, did it? So, you know what I mean.
She did clarify. She said she meant songs that are like invocations to you. I will say this. I don't use popular music in Circle. So like I have never used
We don't do a lot of singing.
Yeah, no. I don't use stuff like that.
Now, I know there are some Gardnerians that sing a lot, and the problem is being a witch doesn't make you a vocalist. And so we don't do a lot of singing. However, I do have a theory in some magical traditions, particularly Celtic ones, or what we would call Celtic traditions. I think a lot of spells were sung. But, because singing is very magical.
What I think she might be asking is also just like, are there, songs that feel spiritual or evoke, sort of powerful experiences for you? Oh my God, yes, of course.
Because we've created psychological triggers. With them.
Tons.
I still get a bit magically triggered by Lorien McKinnott's The Visit, because I was listening to that when I was very young and used it in my magic.
Oh my God, yeah. Lorena McKinnott inspired a lot of people to be witches.
Who's this question? Who?
So the question, Elie, was...
he doesn't tell us. He just tells
Lillian.
Oh, it's his person.
The question is sort of, are there songs that feel like invocations to you almost?
Can I tell what I really work at home? What music
what do you play?
Oh my goodness.
Rage Against the Machine, Pantera, and Cypress Hill.
For what?
My witchcraft circle's at home by myself.
You just sit there going...
No, I do the whole thing. I draw the circle, I call the quarters, I consecrate.
Pantera?
Yeah, and Cypress Hill and Rage
weird.
Against the Machine. No, it's
She uses like heavy music.
I'll have to try it sometime.
I will say, when I went through a whole phase where I got super into angelics and doing angelic magic, and there was a lot of like Palestrina and like intense Catholic choral music.
I love that.
I have
yes.
that really intense like Catholic moment. Oh my God, enough with the microphones.
We can do it together, Brian. Let's.
You
do
know
it.
what song I'm talking about,
Yes.
though.
It's on that movie Arthur.
It's like The Omen. Yes.
You know what it is? Levi,
Oh,
the name
yes,
of
it is
It's
on
on one of the Arthur.
What are you
movies.
talking about?
Excalibur.
Carmina Burana?
That song was from
Yes.
Excalibur.
Yeah, you're all talking about Carmina
Yes,
Burana.
yes.
You know,
Carl
that
Orff's version.
So they used that in the early Alexandrian circles. I don't know if Gardnerian's doing this, but at some point the Alexandrians started using the record players for their circles, which we can all relate to by today's
Beautiful.
standards,
Wow.
but we're not using record players.
Right.
So there were certain songs they used the London Choir. They used that one.
Yeah, Carmina Burana.
But a different version, I think. A darker one, actually.
Yeah.
So they had certain ones that they used, and we play around with it today. I do prefer music without words,
Yeah, me too.
but I sometimes use music with words. And the reasons why is because the words affect what you're thinking, and you need to be focusing on other
Sometimes
things.
that Cypress Hill is good, though. Yeah.
I don't know. I like
When no one's
It
looking,
depends.
it's I'm the Colors of the Wind by Pocahontas.
Oh,
that's why is that
adorable.
precious?
I love that.
secretly he's just
That's
for some reason though.
adorable.
You
For
could some part of you is like, this is real.
I can see it like in the room. It's like 3 a.m. We're a little in our cups, and we're just like,
Yes.
it's like, how high will the sycamore
Yes.
grow?
Yes.
Like just having a full moment,
That's beautiful. That's
like a full
adorable.
Disney moment.
That's
I
adorable.
think that's probably happened before. I believe
Not for a
this.
long time.
I will say, music. I'm very sensitive to music, and so like there are. My music follows my mood very intensely, but I don't think I've ever used it circle wise beyond like instrumental stuff, or if it is vocalized, it's very like
There is
Gregorian.
a soft side to Brian. Just ask Tiki.
Oh yeah, the soft side of Brian, Liz says.
I love that.
This mortician thing keeps coming up, which I think is interesting.
How many of you are morticians? How many of you even know morticians?
Maybe. This person saying morticians can be initiated in the Gardnerian tradition. Yes, they can.
Yeah, it's not a Gardnerian thing.
Yeah, it's not a Gardnerian thing at all. It's
I think where it came from is that in the Alexandrian tradition, there's more of a focus on as being a life cult, I think, in a way. But also, I think it had a lot to do with this. The early Alexandrians researched a lot of Egyptian mythologies and practices, and Alex also researched a lot of that. So it comes from the idea that the priests of life and the priests
Right,
of
there
death
were
had
two
to be
distinct
separate.
paths in Egyptian.
It's not really witchcraft. We obviously do have the god of death and resurrection, but we don't tarry long with the dead, really. Not in that sense.
no.
Death is a part of the cycle of fertility, however. So I wouldn't get too hung up on it unless you're a mortician trying to get into an Alexandrian coven. Because we can't
Even
really speak
then,
about
you're
that.
probably
But
fine.
I can guarantee you, if you go out of witchcraft, there are a lot of occultists who have stranger ideas.
That's what I was going to bring up, and Elie might know this better than I. There used to be a lot of weird rules about joining some of
there
these
is.
occult
There
orders
is,
and like
yeah.
who couldn't join and what you. I mean,
The Gardnerians early on didn't like people who didn't have money, and that's actually true. Like they didn't like Ray Bone because Ray Bone was a nurse; she was too common. Most of the early Gardnerians were well off, which was
Aristocratic.
they were not quite that station. That was the Golden Dawn. But the idea in the occult early on was that you had to come from a well-educated, moneyed family
Landed
to get
gentry.
into anything.
here's something.
And Alexandrians were the first ones who really opened it up to the common people.
We got the flower children that used
Yes.
to go to
well,
Maxine.
we were the first ones.
Right,
The
right.
Gardnerians aren't like that anymore. But in the formative years of the 50s, that was a true thing, from what I understand and can observe.
Some orders would check whether you'd been arrested for things or been a drug addict or a
Yeah,
criminal.
the Masons still do a background check.
right?
do.
I didn't know that, but
They also have to meet your spouse.
Yeah,
If you want to become a Mason, they have to meet your spouse, and your spouse has to give permission for you to join. There are a lot of rules and a lot of orders. Witchcraft is not as strict as some of those.
I will also say this though, and this is a caveat. There is a long history of paupers pretending to be aristocrats in the occult orders. This is Cagliostro. This is Dean Kelly. This is
Because they had to get
yes,
in.
Right.
but there's a long history of being like, well, we only accept the
There's
posh, and they're all the fisherman's
What is
daughter.
that?
Right?
What is
You know?
that movie that just came out, which was this story. It's a real story of that Russian girl who pretended to be a New York.
I don't know what it's called, but I know what you're talking about.
Well, yes, the story of people doing that in the world of money goes back a very long time.
You might be
So,
sponsored
yes.
by some family
You had to
with money,
pretend
but you
you're
didn't
rich
really
to
have
hang
any of
out
your
with
own.
No, you didn't, and a lot of them actually lived in poverty. Like Dee and Kelly struggled a lot.
Right.
I mean, I'll be honest with all of you here. You might find me horrible, but I'm not going to initiate someone that works at McDonald's. Not in my coven.
Ooh.
Not because it's a sin to work at McDonald's, not because it makes you a bad person to work at McDonald's, but it shows me that you're not in a place in your life where you're going to be cohesive for my group. Doesn't mean I would think you're not witchcraft material. I'd say you need to go on with your life and focus on other things before you focus on witchcraft.
Well, we all have a strong professional nature. Is that
Well,
right?
plus I,
We have a strong
quite
professional
frankly,
nature.
like to surround. I like my coven to be filled with people that can bring the power, and that power has to come from all kinds of levels, as Elie was saying.
Right.
And if
Accomplishment.
you're still in a place in your life where you're not together, it's not going to work. I also don't want to initiate anyone in my coven right now, our coven, who's under the age of 25. That wasn't always a rule for me.
Right,
Technically, it's not a witchcraft rule. It's a
Right.
me rule, and a us rule that we've agreed on for various reasons: maturity, dedication, mental illness. You know where someone's at 25. You don't necessarily know where they're at.
But the seriousness of what we're offering, this
Yes.
is not a play
And
toy.
we're not
It's a lot
a
of
coven
work.
filled with kids,
No.
and we don't technically really want to circle with 20-year-olds because that would be annoying.
Well, every now and then.
we
it's
do
okay.
have a call.
Dating them and circling with them are not the same
Same
thing.
thing.
We do have a call.
Levi loves 20-year-olds.
Hi, who is this? No, he doesn't. Who is this?
Hello. I am a man with many names.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be. That's right.
Blessed be.
Which reminds me,
Um,
I need to talk to you about that in the future because I have a question for you. But go
This
on.
is a full Arya Stark thing. A girl has no name. Okay, Arya Stark.
No, this
What-
is Arya Stark.
Yeah,
This is under-
I know. A girl
He
who
doesn't
has
know
no
who
name.
that is, though.
What is your name? I mean, what is your question?
What is your question?
What's your question?
Star Child, let's hear it.
Let's see. I'll start with you, Levi. So to the extent that you can share on the air,
Okay.
what is your greatest joy since I kind of have a multiple question here. So first, what is your greatest joy since hiving off?
Okay.
Your most prominent point of difficulty, and also an aspect that was completely unforeseen.
The greatest joy
Love that.
Joy, difficulty, and unforeseen.
and unforeseen. Joy was realizing that craft can go on, that craft is alive, that it moves, that people are interested, people are curious, that the craft will continue to blossom and continue to grow and continue to be its own, a force into itself. And that's just a joy to watch. Greatest difficulty, teaching. This is a very hard thing to have to do. I am a person who memorizes things very easily. I am a person who, I'm not saying that makes me better than anyone. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I have a brain that works that way. And learning how to teach people for whom memorizing long strings of
Right,
poetry are
right,
difficult,
right,
or
right.
understanding a liturgy is difficult, and they don't copy as fast as I do. And so
Levi, this is why I drink.
this
It's
has been a difficulty
different
to me.
brains, different brains.
Exactly.
You have to come at it
And
from
I was a
different
teacher for
brains.
almost 11 years. So I understand different learning styles, but with adults, it's different. And so that's been the biggest difficulty. And unforeseen. How, if you're not careful, it could become very isolating.
Ooh.
Like,
Like what?
if
Like
you're
what?
not careful, it can become very isolating.
Being a high priest, especially when you're working in the beginning.
Yeah.
Or priestess.
So that would be my answer.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate that answer.
You're welcome.
Very thoughtful, very enlightening. Let's see. Elie, I have kind of a two-part question for you as well.
Did you hear my my last
How?
answers about music and Rage Against the Machine and Cypress Hill and Circle? Didn't you love that?
He listens
No,
to
it is
rap,
not.
Elie.
That was great.
How
That
about
was
some
wonderful.
Pantera?
He's like G-Dogs in the Grove.
When Brian's in Salem, Adam, I got some stuff up my
course.
sleeve. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I'm waiting. I'm
So-
ready.
okay.
I am ready.
All right. So,
Okay, so funny enough, my question's kind of about that in some way. The first part is, do you find it difficult to reconcile occultism or other practices that you've had in the past with Alexandrian crafts in terms of correspondences, preservation of tradition, or Kabbalah, or whatever other knowledge?
I love it. I love that question. In the very beginning of my Alexandrian training, I had a lot more questions like that. So-and-so says this color is for Jupiter, or this angel is for Jupiter, and someone else says something else.
And God help you with the spellings.
Well, we learned that was all over the board. There were going to be some differences in the spelling of names, or the choice of color or stone, or some sort of symbolic representation. Today, I don't have the problem. I'm really honest about it. I don't know. I don't think it's that I'm a different person if I step into an Alexandrian circle versus a Rosicrucian ritual or ceremonial magic ritual, or even experimenting with a grimoire spell where you're doing a circle and putting an entity into the triangle. If you're very clear on the choice you're making and you're doing that work specifically, I don't think there's any problems. What I don't do anymore is try to drag other things into the Alexandrian tradition or vice versa. It is what it is. I do it straight up. It works.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I keep it I think
Funny
I
enough,
keep it separate.
You kind of answered my second question, which was, you find yourself doubling back and trying to apply craft to older practices or knowledge.
I do not.
Like, do you? Oh, okay.
No,
Very
I don't.
interesting.
I don't, because, well, and you can, I can't wait to hear what the rest of the
Maxine
question
used to
is.
say, "Don't mix your drinks."
Don't mix your drinks.
Which is,
Totally,
I think that makes sense to an Alexandrian.
Yeah, but say the
Yeah.
rest of your question, man of many names.
That's a nice name.
Well, most people call me Papa these days, I'll say.
I am not calling you
I met
Papa.
you as Papa. I met you as Papa.
Sorry, I can't call him.
I can't bear myself to do it.
But here's what else I think when
It's
I think
okay.
about
It's
Papa.
okay.
I think about.
I grew up in Appalachia. This ain't happening.
No, I think about Papa resting over my knee and me giving Papa some little smacks on the ass. That's my idea of Papa.
Please tell me you're talking about a dog.
I have different ideas
That's
about
a fun idea.
So that's just me. That's just me. So I'm cool with it. I'm cool.
I
with
think
it.
of lentil.
That second part is, and this is kind of for Levi too. Like the Bible, for instance, with your Catholicism, this is it's a book of power. It's a book of spells.
Sure.
So I wonder if you ever double back and you find yourself replacing God with goddess,
I use
Go ahead.
This is a whole thing. I know this is a big thing for a lot of magicians. I know this is a big thing for a lot of people who practice any kind of magic. I am a weird duck. I'm an odd duck in the witchcraft community, in the sense that I am just oddly religious, in the sense that, like, my magic is religious, my philosophy is religious, all the philosophers I read. I'm a priest. And so, like, I don't think of anything as, I am not a Crowleyite. And what I mean by that is, I do not look at things as magical technologies. Like, I have never believed that. I don't believe that now. It's never been my approach to magic, where people are like, well, I'm using the technology of the Hebrew god names to invoke. Yeah, sure. It is not a technology. I don't believe that's how the universe works. I don't think that's how it's not sound epistemologically or ontologically to me. Like, I'm just a believer. And so when I approach magic, it's got to come from a place of belief. And for me, that is the god and goddess. So trying to go back and reinsert her or him into names like Elohim and Yod Hevod and whatnot. Can I do it? Yes. Have I done it? Yes. But I don't find myself wanting to a lot anymore, is what I would say.
No, I agree with that. And also, I think there are many beings in the multiverse, many beings. And I think we would recognize there's not just one god and goddess either. So, or there's angels, there's spirits, there's elementals, there's multiple kinds of beings. I don't replace names either and try to be technological and say, well, this spark plug works in a Honda and it works in a Mercedes. No, get the Mercedes spark plug.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, I've just gotten really weirdly religious with it. Like, I just am like,
But what do you mean by religious?
I'm like we're calling down the gods, we're putting them into human flesh, and that's what's going to drive the battery.
That's what we call old school.
That is how we work magic. We're going to draw the gods down, we're going to put them into human flesh.
I believe that.
And that will be the battery.
All
I believe that
magic
too.
comes from religion. pre-Christian religion.
Yeah.
You know, and early Christianity. Like all magic is tied to religion. There was never like a old atheist
secular
that's
magic,
right.
right?
Right. That's right. There wasn't. The powers
It's
were real.
become a thing, but it wasn't.
Could you imagine the Greek magical papyri being like, "Oh, spirits that are not real"?
Oh,
When we
spirits
were
that may
in
or may not
Salem,
be.
there was when I was doing the Alexandrian soiree at Salem, there was a woman who said she did not consider that witchcraft was a religion. Witchcraft, she didn't work with God, she just worked magic. And so she'd always seen as witchcraft as just spell work, and it wasn't religion to her. She went on about that, and then she proceeded to ask me why her spells don't work. But her spells aren't working. And
Ding dong.
She wanted to know
Candygram.
why.
Yeah.
The gospel.
Land shark.
It's like that line from the Gospel of Mark. I mean, you know, you're talking about the Bible having wisdom in it. You know, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Right? It's one of my favorite lines.
You have to have a higher power in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, we're old school.
But
Like that.
Adam, I don't expect you to, considering the time we spend together.
You're so terrible at this.
Matto, whatever. Matto, Adam,
I have one
Argatras,
for you, too.
Incubus, Succubus, whatever.
I'm getting
your name
so
is.
much shade at the time.
He's
do you
an
have a
anagram.
question?
No.
Do you have a specific question for me?
I do. And again,
You had to really make this one up. We
I
spent
did. It took me a minute, man. we talked a lot, but again, to the extent that you can share on the air, I'm curious as to a piece of seldom known craft history or a prominent personal experience that you've had directly with our progenitor or our elder, in, for example, like Val or people from Temple of the Mother.
Oh, you mean you want to know of an experience I've had with
That you could share on
an
that.
Alexandrian?
Yeah,
God, there's been
yeah,
so
but
many.
something that is very, it's difficult to get out of you, or something like that. Something that you don't talk about very often.
On air.
Yeah, something you can say on the air.
Respecting them, of course.
That hot tub in Athens.
I think.
We had to borrow bathing suits from the front desk.
Well, without naming names, I was at Treadwell's.
only got underwear.
I was at Treadwell's, and this was for a man named. My brain's blanking out now. Not Kerrigan, the other one.
Jamal.
Sorry, my brain just went dead.
yeah.
Jamal was having a book signing, and me and Christian were in London. And he was having a book signing for, I think, A Coin for a Ferryman. I'm not sure. I don't remember now. But the thing is there were all these Alexandrians, old school ones there. Galatea, Mary Rands, like people would know. Maxine was there. And, of course, so I'm just like,
Were you initiated then? or
I
not?
was, but
Okay,
I was
all right,
new.
cool.
I was new.
Yay.
And so I was totally, they're like, they were in Alex's coven. They were old school. They were all, and so some of the people I did know were like pointing out all these like iconic people who I now have heard of. They're well known in the UK. And so I got to meet a lot of them. But I was sitting there and this very small, fairy-like creature comes up to me and comes right up like some short people do, where they get like right up on you and then they look up, which is very intimidating to tall people. And she looks up and she goes, you can suck all the power out of a room. I know this because I can do it too. And then she ran away. No idea who this woman was at the time. I later found out who she was and got to meet her and got to know her a little bit. Who is this strange fairy creature? You know what she's saying to me? And so then all of a sudden a man named Kerrigan came over to me and he said, oh, that's so-and-so. And she was someone who was from Alex's coven and in the Temple of the Mother. And I know her now. I'm not going to say her name, though. And he said, she's very dangerous. I said, oh. He goes, she can suck all the power out of a circle. I said, oh, I've heard. So that was a fun interaction. And you know who I'm talking about.
I know exactly who you're talking about. I've met her too.
But that was strange. But yes, so there we go. But there have been so many. I found that the older Alexandrians, the Alexandrians that I have known from Alex's day, I get along with them very well. They adore me. I haven't met all of them, obviously. In fact, I've only met female ones. I've never met any men who were around at that time, either because they're dead or they've moved on. I don't know. Women do live longer. Women do live longer. So so I don't know. But yes, I've had so many. So many. I'll say that.
Definitely.
I think that's why I fell in love with it. It wasn't my lifelong mission to become Alexandrian. When somebody was asking me about my decision. It was Angel asking me about my decision to get done. When I was first brought into Alexandrian, I was told I was getting Alexandrian, California Gardenarian, and Whitecraft Gardenarian. And I thought, well, this is a lot of hats. This is a lot of stuff going on. But as a new initiate, you're just like, okay, the ritual was Alexandrian, except for they had put up special candles to be a nod to their California Gardenarian thing. And they didn't have any nods for Whitecroft because they weren't really Whitecroft. But I didn't know that at the time. So, it wasn't my mission. I really feel like it was the goddess and the priesthood that drew me into these waters, and I love it now. I can't imagine myself as anything but Alexandrian, and the Alexandrians I have met exude witchcraft and occultism on the levels that appeal to me. Because I kind of get the best of both worlds.
That is a great place to end. Did we answer your questions, she who has no name?
Absolutely. They were all beautiful answers.
Good.
Thank you
Enjoy
so
the
much.
rest of your evening.
Blessed be. So I think we
you
actually...
guys as well. Blessed be.
Thank you. Blessed be. I think we are actually going to call it a do for the evening, you guys. Because we've got some other things going on, but it's 10 minutes early. But anyway, this is the end of season 4. Sorry it was such a scattered season, all the moving back and forth. So we usually start again sometime after October, but the 3 of us will figure it out. We'll also figure out what our idea for season 5 is.
Are you guys going to have me back?
Yes, we'll have you back. I think I have it. We'll have to talk, but I think I have a season 5 in me. But we would love to hear your ideas. We'll probably try to reformat it. I thought maybe that would be the season we do interviews, but that's a lot of work.
Yes.
So I don't know. We could always do phone interviews with people and have a panel with phone interviews. But we want to hear what you guys do. You like the way this season went?
Beautiful.
Did you like other ones better? Would you like to see something new?
Tell how much you loved Elie.
The topics are supposed to be based around Alexandrian Gardenarian Nishtari craft, and obviously we don't want to teach people how to do magic. We like to discussing magic. We like discussing about some of our experiences, but we don't want this to show. This is how we do a candle.
Right.
First of all, we save that for our initiates, and we only do candle magic when we really don't care about something.
When we have nothing else to do.
Anyway, happy summer, and we will look forward to seeing you all again and your comments in the channel.
Absolutely.
Come see us at HexFest in person.
We will see many of you at HexFest.
Yay.
Bye, everyone.